Hi, welcome to 15 Minute Story. This is the fifth 15 Minute Story, and I'm with my friend John Lim here. And I said that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And where are you from?
I'm from Singapore.
He's from Singapore. Is there any cities in Singapore, or is it just Singapore?
Singapore is the city, it is the state, it is the country, it is the island. It's
Okay.
45 minutes coast to coast, so...
Alright. So John's from Singapore, and he's just been such a light on this campus at Harding University. And he's someone that's just been so receptive whenever I've talked to him, and just receptive about just love and just talking about things that matter. And just, you see this guy around campus, he's got a beaming smile, and you just know something is going right in his heart. And I'm very thankful for the times I've gotten to talk to him and be around him. So today, I just have some questions for John, and he has some awesome things that he's going to talk about of his growing up. So the first question today I have for John is, when in Singapore, growing up, when is the first time you remember learning about God or learning about just Jesus, or just maybe it piquing your interest? When was the first time that you remember that?
It's not so much a memory of learning about Jesus. I do remember the first time I was kind of preaching Jesus or sharing Jesus. So in first grade, in all of Singapore's school systems, we have to get vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
So and this is a national thing. So we were sitting in this room, in this air-conditioned room. I'm sitting in a line with my friends, and we see one by one our friends getting up and getting vaccinations, getting injected with needles and all.
Yeah.
And some of the people just around me, the guy just behind me was starting to get a bit panicky and wondering, oh shucks, is it gonna be okay? and then in my 7-year-old voice, I told him, you'll be okay. Jesus is here.
That's awesome.
And then my friend, probably he was a bit stunned. Probably, I think he was Buddhist. I don't remember who he was. But he asked, who? I said, Jesus. And then he said, where is he? And so I point to the open space to our left.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell him, he's right there in this empty space. Because at that point, I already had some conception of Jesus being everywhere. How he was omnipresent somehow and invisible. And so I tried communicating that to him. I don't remember what else transpired after that, but I do feel that was kind of an acknowledgement and the beginning of my 7-year-old brain to think about who God was, how he really is present in every situation of life.
Yeah. So what does religion look like in Singapore growing up? Like, what was the predominant religions, I guess? Or non-religions? It's
changed somewhat from the last time I checked, but to my best knowledge, Singapore's population is about 5.96 million people,
Wow.
And we
That's a lot of people.
crammed into one space. So it's about 60% Buddhist, about 20% Christian, and when I say Christian, I mean inclusive of Catholics and basically any Christian subgroup you can think of. It has about 10 to 15% Muslim, another 10 to 15% of Hindus, and then the rest is a mix of just other world religions, Sikhism, and so on and so forth. Okay, I need to backtrack. So the 60% of Buddhists, that includes like Taoists, because most Singaporeans, to my knowledge, aren't very certain which category they exactly fall into. They're kind of similar, kind of related, and so they have very similar temples and practices, but that's how generally it is. We've inherited a lot of that Eastern tradition, and that's the context that I grew up in.
Right. So you told me about blessings and struggles of growing up in Singapore, and kind of like the way us two grew up is probably just complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Growing up in Texas and Singapore, I'm guessing it's different. But what were you talked about blessings and struggles, so what were the blessings and struggles of growing up in that to lead you to what you called an accelerated spirituality?
Right. So I was fortunate to be raised in a Christian home. I'm a second generation Christian, and my parents were very active in the church by the time I was born. So when I was growing up, I had the benefit of listening to all these Bible stories, listening to Jesus being taught and Jesus being preached. So in that sense, even though I grew up in such a multi-racial, multi-religious society, I think I grew up in the same way that a lot of like probably you and I probably grew
Yeah.
up the same way, and a lot of
Cool.
people that we know. I think that helped me to somehow I just fell in love with all these stories. I love hearing stories about God controlling animals
Yeah.
to walk into the ark together. I love the stories of that seem to portray Jesus as some kind of superhuman.
Yeah.
How he would walk on water, how
Yeah.
he would miraculously cure people, and how everyone just kind of loved him, and he could literally just touch someone,
Yeah.
and they would be cured of whatever ailment or disease they had. And so I love those stories. And I found that in church was also the place where I could feel like I belonged. So
Yeah.
in school, especially in the years of my elementary education, first through sixth grade, I wasn't the brightest of students, but where I could excel was in Sunday Bible class, because for some reason I knew all the answers to the worksheets that they
Yeah.
give. So how many loaves and fish did Jesus feed the 5,000 with? I was like, 5 loaves and 2 fishes kind of thing. and I was one of 3 guys in a class of 7 girls.
There you go.
So and that kind of beginning context was where I felt I can roll with this. This is my place kind of thing. I began to be very deliberate in reading scripture when they asked us to read. I loved it. And so that kept going, and so I went to the youth group when I was 13. Just got into, well, we call it secondary school, but it's middle school.
Yeah.
And then that joining the youth group opened more opportunities to go
Yeah.
and serve on mission trips.
Where'd you go on mission trips?
Mission trips, when I was 13 and 14, I went to the Philippines to this little village
Oh,
that we
cool.
call Tuao.
Cool.
And it was a life-changing experience
Yeah.
in so many ways. And then when I was 15, I went also to the Philippines, but a city instead of a village called Baguio. And it was and that was my first plunge into a city/area
Yeah.
with a temperature lower than 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Because
That's
because
crazy.
well, for those watching in the future, Singapore is a tropical country. 77 degrees is about the minimum you can get, high of 89 all year round. So anyway,
Yeah.
so that was my mission trip place. And it was kind of during these mission trips that I began to see how the things I had learned in like Sunday Bible class were beginning to be applied. We had this great youth culture about going out and serving, bringing the gospel to other people, and that led me to think, I can do this for a living. I can see myself doing this with my entire life. What really kind of and this is where I begin to come into the struggles part. What really got me to where I am today is an experience that I had when I was 15 on that mission trip to Baguio City. I mentioned earlier that when I was in elementary school, I wasn't doing that well.
Yeah.
And most of my peers back then would have thought me very weird, very strange. I was one of the smallest people in class.
Yeah.
And for an Asian, that means I was really very small. And then I was also one of the chubbiest, especially when I was in second grade. I was quite chubby, and among other things, I was obnoxiously proud because I had these books lying around the house, kind of like children's encyclopedias, and I just loved looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
And as I learned to read them, I was like, okay, I think I know a few things. I began to be very proud of what I knew in school, and so I would just kind of try to rattle off what I knew, which didn't really apply to school, because knowing something from a like National Geographic kids magazine doesn't really translate into doing math.
No, it does not.
So that was a problem. And I ended up being in my class. It was the best class of the level, but I was at the bottom of that class. And so that formative elementary school experience made me feel not very wanted, not very important. On my mission trip when I was 15 years old, when we went to Baguio City, I began feeling again a sense of non belonging, because the group that I went with was awesome, but I think it was a self inflicted thought that I wasn't able to connect with the people, my team members who are of the same age group. They spoke a kind of language that I somehow couldn't connect with. They were talking about experiences that I also felt I couldn't just join in the conversation with.
Yeah.
I connected more with the people, the local people, the Filipinos, than I did with my own team members. And I began to question, what am I doing wrong? Why am I feeling so outcast and so lonely?
Yeah.
And over the course of a few nights, we would go back to the place we were staying, and I would just be praying, and on a couple of occasions just bawling, because I hated the feeling of being alone, not being not being valued.
Yeah.
It was on one of those nights that I finally came to the realization that all this feeling of loneliness, all this feeling of not belonging, God felt it too. When Jesus was on that cross, and he was in the place of ultimate abandonment, not only by people that he could see and touch, but also by his Father.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and at that point I realized that, hey, at least I'm not in that place. But the idea was Jesus understood how I felt at that time. He's always understood how I've always felt.
Yeah.
And he was with me in that time, and he was a friend who just would not let me go.
Oh my god. That was so good.
It was.
I've never thought about it like that. Oh my word.
It was just an insight that came like from the blue.
Yeah.
Like, so in the same way that, well, I guess it struck you. It struck me too.
I never thought Jesus was being lonely. Like, I don't know. I just never thought about it like that. But he was. My God.
Was.
Yeah.
It was.
It says like, take heart because I've overcome the world. Oh, man. John, you are blowing my mind right now.
Only because it's been blown by others.
Yeah, that's so. I've thought about that a lot. Like, wisdom isn't new; it's just passed on generation to generation.
It is.
That was such a good answer. I'm gonna have to skip some because I really want to hear your last thing. You can maybe tie around the weaknesses today with your word for hope now. But so John right now has a word. I think a lot of us have like words or phrases that we kind of go through in seasons. Like, I've had different ones in the past and ones now. But John has a word, which is hope. And he's just going to share a little bit about what that means to him, and what that's meant to him in the past and what it means now looking into his future.
So hope is kind of my word for the year kind of thing. It's just a concept that someone told me about. And I came across it because at the start of this year, I realized how easy it is to be focused on the dark side of things.
Yeah.
How you can go into a situation and just think, there's a lot that's wrong with this world. There's a lot that's wrong with me.
Yeah.
But I think hope plays an important part because hope is about acknowledging a better reality than what is in front of us, or acknowledging a better reality that is going to be. It's kind of the present but not here yet kind of idea. We are living under the grace of God, we are living with his benefits, but it is not fully actualized yet.
Yeah.
So when I think about myself, I think there are many days I look in the mirror one morning and I think, what a pathetic excuse for a human being kind of thing.
Oh man.
But,
yeah.
And then as I think about it, I think that's not a God thought.
Yeah.
I'm created in the image of God. Other people around me whom God also created them in his image, and he wants for us to be more than we currently are. He created us to be wonderful beings, but in a constant process of growth and development.
Yeah.
And I think if it's so easy to look around the world and just think, there's no hope for this. It's all going to nothing. But knowing that God is still at work in this world, knowing that God still has a plan and a purpose for all of us,
Yeah.
to redeem his creation to eternity, I think that is it's a hope that we can hold on to firmly, and we know it's not going to betray us.
We didn't even get into the part of how you ended up at Harding in America from Singapore, and he wants to do ministry for the rest of his life. And this is so like my mind is just blown right now on the last like probably 5 minutes of my life. I'm just gonna go sit and think about it. But thank you. That's 15-minute story. Yeah, we're out. Double salute out. Thank you. Woo! We're done.
Thanks, mate.
Dude,